clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome to Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into SST on Apple Podcasts, app, Spotify, and on YouTube. We got a good one for you guys today. We are joining, they are joining us, but we are joining the Across the Cavs podcast with our friend Zach Weiss, friend of the show. Zach Weiss hosts his Cavaliers podcast, Cleveland Cavaliers, on the Across the Cavs feed, on his YouTube page, as well as anywhere you get your podcast. We did a little combined episode as the Knicks went home and home with the Cleveland Cavaliers on Tuesday and Wednesday night. Part of the reason why the schedule for our podcast was a little bit off this week, amongst a few other things, but we're back. We're here to talk some Knicks basketball. We talk with Zach about the past two games where the Knicks took on the Cavs and split the home and home. Classic home and home split, right? Well, not exactly, because the Knicks won in Cleveland, the Cavs won in New York, and here we are with our shoulders shrugging a little bit, just saying both these teams are banged up. Don't know if we learned a lot, but we have to talk about it because there are some things to point to in regards to the Knicks and, for that matter, the Cavs as well. So stay tuned. After we hit the intro, we will be talking to Zach Weiss on the Across the Cavs. We're just sharing the episode right here on Subway Sports Talk, but give Zach a follow at Across Cavs on X, as well as on TikTok. He's everywhere as well. So great stuff talking Knicks and Cavs and that whole series, and really the outlook on an Eastern Conference where the Knicks and Cavs are going to be tied at the hip. They're two teams that hope to be in that 3 to 5 range in the Eastern Conference, obviously both off to slower starts. The Cavs have been missing Darius Garland and Jared Allen for a big portion of the season already. The Knicks just missed RJ Barrett on this most previous game. So it's not like we're a complete product, ready to discuss playoff aspirations. However, we are discussing rotations, what we saw, what we're learning, what we're thinking and feeling about these teams this early in the year. Because frankly, if you're a Knicks fan, you're going to be interested in the Cleveland Cavaliers this year based upon how we expect the Knicks and Cavs to be at the middle top tier of that Eastern Conference. So stay tuned for that. Before we get to that, I got to talk about another Zach. Not Zach Weiss, who we'll talk to in a minute, but I got to talk about Zach Wilson. We spent some time talking about the New York Giants. We've obviously spent a ton of time talking about the NFL at large. I picked the Giants 2 weeks in a row in a teaser on Subway Sports Talk picks here to great success. I've had a nice couple weeks in a row here. I'm now at 16-7-1 on the picks. The picks are looking good. We're 11 games above 500 as a group. I went 3-0. Pat Boyle, Cody O'Connor, and Mark Shenlugan all 2-1. So great week, 9-3 for the boys. But that's not why we're talking about the Jets, because I didn't bet on them. No one bet on them. However, people are starting to bet on them. People are starting to talk about the Jets in such a manner that's making me a little bit confused and concerned. And I want to apologize before I get deep into it to all the rational Jets fans out there, because there are a lot of you. Like all fan bases, most of the times it's the loud minority who gets called out as stupid or a bad fan or a dumb homer or whatever you want to say about fans who overreact to their teams. But it's not just the fans of the Jets or the aggressive fans of the Jets who are making some of this noise that's putting my antennas up and saying, hold on just a second here. Because people are talking about Zach Wilson. People are talking about this team with some expectation, with some hope. And yes, the Jets have been doing pretty well. The Jets are a very good team overall. In fact, I sat here on this podcast before the season started and talked highly of the Jets, saying that they're a better team than the Giants. I expected their schedule to be more difficult, which it has been. But because of that elite defensive unit, they've been in more games and they've been getting the job done in some of these close games when it matters most. So kudos to the Jets. Shout out to what they've accomplished at this point. But again, I'm not talking now to the rational Jets fan. I'm talking to the irrational Jets fan and the irrational sports fan who are starting to say little whispers about Zach Wilson and this team making a run. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. The Jets can make a run towards the playoffs with Zach Wilson still being Zach Wilson. Unfortunately, my guy is still not a good quarterback, okay? So there are people out there, Daniel Jeremiah is talking about it. You got Rex Ryan on TV talking about it, how he's making strides. He's making some good plays. He's still able to make some of the big plays. You have to remember, you have to remind yourself, for even all the expectation and hope you have now for the New York Jets to make the playoffs, it still rides on Zach not being a good quarterback. Take all the numbers you want. You can find a couple that are kind of nice. But at the end of the day, there's been 2 games where he's been even remotely close to above average. In reality, it's been 1 game he's been well above average this year. His QB rating is a 71. He's only thrown over 200 yards twice this season. He's still only thrown 5 touchdowns on the entire season through 7 games, 7.5 or 6.5, but no, it's basically 7. He played the whole game in Buffalo, right? Even in the 2 games where he threw for over 200 yards, you look at this game against the Giants, and yes, albeit it was in the rain, 50-yard huge pass about 3 yards down the field to Breece Hall that he took to the house because he's awesome. So 240 yards in the most recent game. Yeah, sure, it was a 200-yard game, but in reality, Breece Hall did a lot of that work, and the connection with Garrett Wilson was great, and he did what he had to do to get the job done when it mattered most. But if you're sitting here as a Jets fan, starting to talk yourself into Zach Wilson, that is where you were mistaken. Because one of the big things that you have to remember about this NFL, when we all are so reactionary every single week, is that whether you like it or not, these primetime games end up mattering more to public narrative. So at 1 o'clock on a Sunday, the Jets and Giants take place with 9 or 8 other games, 9 total games going on in that 1 o'clock hour. Not everybody in the country is locked into every snap, every play of the Jets-Giants game. And that means you see the highlights, you see some of the good stuff, you see the touchdown pass for Breece Hall. But in reality, did Zach Wilson play well? Did Zach Wilson do many good things in that game on Sunday? I mean, both offenses were horrible. We're not going to get started about how bad the Giants were. It was pathetic, right? Of course, I'm not even going to pretend to act like the Giants are better. That's not what I'm doing here. But the next 2 games upcoming for the Jets are both primetime games. They're against the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football coming up this week, and then at the Las Vegas Raiders in 2 weeks on Sunday night. After that, you got the semi-primetime hour, and I call it semi-primetime because it's the 4 o'clock hour at the Buffalo Bills, who will be looking for some vengeance after the Week 1 defeat at the hands of the Jets. If you have confidence in Zach Wilson today, just remember this part of the podcast. Remember me telling you to slow your roll. Because it's not about the Jets' wins and losses. It's about the performance of the quarterback. And unfortunately, right now, it's still freaking bad. Okay? Right now, he's averaging, from an air yards perspective, 5.5 yards per attempt. That's air yards. How far is he throwing it down the field? That tells you almost everything you need to know, because the team is not allowing him and pushing him to throw the ball downfield. Only twice this year has he gone fully above the 5 number, and he had a 7.3 and a 7.2. Those were both decent games. One was the most recent game against the Giants. The other one was against the Chiefs, where they competed and they played pretty well. He threw 2 touchdowns. That was his best game of the year by far for Zach Wilson. But when you see this, and it's going similarly for Russell Wilson right now, Russell Wilson leads the league in completion percentage. Leading the league in completion percentage is basically code for your coaches don't trust you to do much else, right? Well, what is Zach Wilson doing? He's only completing 56% of his passes right now. So you take the really minimal air yards per attempt number of 5.6 air yards per attempt, and then combine that with a 56% completion percentage. Those 2 numbers right there are not usually hand in hand. Low air yards per attempt go with high completion percentage. And if it's high air yards per attempt, you can live with the lower completion percentage, because so many of those plays that do complete might be for bigger chunks of yards. That's not happening in New York. Right now, they're not scoring enough points. It's obvious. Their defense is doing the heavy lifting, and that's okay. But can we just rewind real quick? Where were we last year with Zach Wilson? Where were we with this guy just 1 year ago, trying to talk ourselves into what Zach Wilson can do for the New York Jets? All of a sudden, The Jets win 4 in a row. They beat Pittsburgh, who were underwhelming in that portion of the season. They beat Miami big, and that was a game where he threw for 200 yards, but no touchdowns, and the Jets scored 40 points. Okay, that means Zach Wilson's probably pretty good, right? Then they beat the Green Bay Packers, who also were an underwhelming team last year. They beat the Denver Broncos, who were an underwhelming team last year. Now, recently, what have they done? They obviously beat the Giants, who are a very underwhelming team this year. They beat the Eagles. It's a wonderful win. They beat the Broncos, which is not a great win, but it's a fine win, a very solid win. Sure. But last year, after that 4-game win streak, what happened after that? Zach Wilson threw 3 interceptions against the New England Patriots. He threw for 154 yards and 1 touchdown against the Buffalo Bills in a win, albeit, but not an impressive stat line from one Zach Wilson. And then the one where it kind of hit the fan again, back in New England, 9 for 22, 77 yards, 0 touchdowns. Okay? So just when you think that you're figuring it out and Zach Wilson's turning a corner, just remind yourself, this has happened before. Okay? And I'm not saying the Jets can't beat the Chargers because the Chargers can be beat. And I'm not saying the Jets can't beat the Raiders because the Raiders can be beat. And I'm never going to say that the Jets aren't going to be a playoff team this year because I believe they can. Their defense is that good. Their skill position players are that good. Okay? This is not a referendum on the New York Jets. It's a referendum on fans being over the top confident in this team when he is still your quarterback. He's not the answer, Sway. Zach Wilson is not the answer. And I really don't love, it doesn't make me happy to come out here and crap on your hopes and dreams. It doesn't make me happy to crap on Zach Wilson as a quarterback. But when I see him play football, I have minimal confidence. And I'm rooting for the guy. It doesn't sound like I am because of how I'm talking. But when I watch the Jets, I root for the Jets. I root for Zach Wilson. I love all those skill players. I want to see them succeed. I want to see Zach succeed. I hope I'm dead wrong. I hope he throws 280 yards every game for the rest of the season. But to this point, the history of this season and last season and this man's career and this offense to this point is showing you otherwise. It's showing you he's more likely than not to throw less than 200 yards, that he's more likely than not to throw 0 or 1 touchdown in a game. And maybe that'll be enough for them to sneak past some more victories, to get in contention for a wild card spot. But it shouldn't make you go on X, Twitter, whatever. It shouldn't make talking heads and pundits across America and across the New York market get out here and start hyping up Zach Wilson, because that's not just a hot take. It's just a stupid take. It's something that nothing points to being true. Nothing that we've seen thus far has given or should be giving you any more confidence in him to take that next step. It hasn't existed. It doesn't exist right now. So it's a management of expectations for the Jets. You should go into every single week thinking you have a chance to win. Listen to the rest of the Jets schedule. Chargers, Raiders, Bills. Just mentioned that, right? Then you play the Dolphins. That's going to be a tough one. Falcons, Texans. 2 more winnable games. Get the Dolphins again at Miami will be a tough one. Washington, Cleveland, New England. Winnable games. The Jets can win a lot more games this year. But what I don't want to hear is that it's going to be on the back of Zach Wilson turning a corner and figuring this thing out. Every number we have, every eye test we have, outside of what, 2 to 6 or 7 plays a game, says that he will continue to be, at best, a sub-average quarterback. And that might be okay to get to 10 wins this year. And I hope you do. And I'm praying Aaron Rodgers comes back because it'll be electric. It'll be an amazing story, and I would love to watch it happen. But Jets fans, and again, I'm talking to the irrational ones. You rational people who are disagreeing with me right now, or at least saying, I know, why are we even talking about this? This feels stupid to talk about. I agree it feels stupid to talk about. But it feels important to say because there's enough people out there talking about it. All right? So all you people who are trying to talk yourself into Zach Wilson, do yourself a favor. Talk yourself into the Jets being competitive and the Jets being in every single game, every single week, but do not start talking yourself into an offense that's going to score more points than it's been. Not going to happen. You might have a random game here, a random game there where he throws for 2 touchdowns because that feels like his peak. But it's not going to be the offense that wins this season. It's not going to be the defense that goes super deep into the playoffs either because the offense is not good enough. But the playoffs are there for the having. It's possible. Have faith in your Jets. Remain cautious with your quarterback and do not get ahead of yourself because everything we've seen, every stat you can look up is telling us over and over again that he's not the answer. I hate to do it, but I had to do it because it's not just like it. I'm not making this up for fun. I ain't doing the thing that you see on certain places on TV and radio and podcasts, etc., to get the people going. In fact, this take is probably the opposite because 90% of fans, at least I hope 90% of listeners of Subway Sports Talk are listening to this go like, yeah, Pete, I know. We get it. He's not good. What are you doing? I agree with you. You agree with me. We're the rational ones. But there are a lot of people out there who are starting to talk themselves into Zach Wilson because the Jets are winning games. That ain't why they're winning games. That's all I got. We got picks coming up later in the week. There could be some scheduling difficulties for the picks podcast on Thursday night. So you might not see the pod on Friday morning. You will see some semblance of picks. Please follow us on social media because the picks will be there no matter what on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, at Subway Sports Talk. We got the picks there every single week, no matter what. The podcast will be there in some format, whether it's all of us or some of us. There will be a podcast to talk picks, and there will be picks on social media. All right. But now we got Zach Weiss from the Across the Cavs podcast. I technically joined him. So we talked some Cavs, we talked some Knicks, we talked some NBA. We had some fun with it. He's a great guy. We love to talk sports on his podcast, on my podcast, and we do it together sometimes. So a beautiful thing. So Across the Cavs, Zach Weiss coming up in just a second. Let me know what you think about Zach Wilson because maybe this segment was stupid, but what's stupider, and I know it's not a word, is people having faith in Zach Wilson. That's all I got. Stay tuned.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome inside the latest edition of Across the Cavs after a win. Who'd have thought? Not me. No, I'm not Paul Rudd. I'm not Jason Siegel. This is not I Love You, Man. This is a Cavs Knicks recap pod. Peter Kennedy of the Subway Sports Talk podcast you last heard from before the Cleveland, New York first-round matchup. This time, Peter, I'm sure we had our takes. We wrote them down somewhere. We talked to our friends in our group chats about it. But no pregame pod predictions, so I think it's a more safe common ground for both of us this time.
Well, if I was right last time heading into that playoff series, I was wrong this time because I bet on the Knicks to not to win yesterday and bet on them to win today. So that's really where I'm at right now. Pretty clunky basketball by both sides, injuries on both sides, more for your team than mine. However, I sit here a little bit like with my shrugging shoulders going on, not knowing what I just watched, not knowing how to feel, but I have some takes and we'll talk about it. So I'm excited.
We will. Pete gives the Jeff Teague shrug, and we've got Across the Cavs Knicks post game coming up after this network 216. On the Cavs side, it felt like this 3-game losing streak was a lot longer than it was. They lost on Friday, they lost on Saturday, and they lost on Tuesday. The way they lost on Friday was by blowing a 10-plus point lead with about 2:25. Meanwhile, tonight, Mike Breen on the Knicks broadcast was saying with 37 seconds, 9-point game, it's over. Forget about it. Meanwhile, it took another 7 minutes for the game to officially end as the fouls kept coming out. Mitchell Robinson stat padded his 3 points into 5 points at the foul line, and he did cook on the glass yet again. Then it was a loss to Indy because nobody was present. No Donovan in that one. Last night, I mean, if I tell you how many times, I'm not an angry sports viewer, Pete, And I don't know if that comes across in a post-game pod, but the worst I'll do is I got a little throw pillow, put my fist in it a couple of times, but it's more just like you do that, you put your hands behind your head, you stare at the ceiling, you close your eyes, you take a deep breath, like, you know what? It's an 82-game season. It is what it is. But what are your thoughts? The Cavs and Knicks played twice. The Knicks won one, lost one. I know New York's had an interesting start to the season as opposed to the Cavs, who have just dealt with injuries. New York feels like not everybody's been on the same page with playing at their highest at the same time.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a weird start, and you got to think about the schedule a little bit. Right now, they've played all teams that are pretty much expected or hoping to be playoff teams or play-in teams at minimum. You got the Celtics, you got the Cavs, obviously back to back, even though they're injured, and you get the Hawks and the Pelicans. Like none of those teams are bad teams. They beat the Hawks, they beat the Cavs once, lose to the Celtics on opening night, which was probably maybe the best game they've played this year, even though the win over the Hawks was very solid. So, it's early in the season. I'm not going to freak out too hard. However, there are some things that are concerning that obviously we're looking closely at, and this schedule doesn't get easier. They got the Bucks coming up on Friday night. So the Knicks are not just a team that's a cute, good, exciting story this year, a lot like the Cavs from 2 years ago when they kind of burst on the scene. Then last year, all of a sudden, it's like expectation. What are you going to do for me now? I don't care about what happened in the beginning of the season or last year. Let's put your money where your mouth is. So a little disappointing for sure. However, I think there's just a little bit of time to find the rotational gel with the DiVincenzo of it all and to see Randall kind of get the jump shot going because the shooting from both teams for the past two nights, pretty ugly. And also, honestly, even the Knicks win on the first game of the back-to-back wasn't super impressive, and it almost felt like they were due for this little letdown in the second night of the back-to-back.
Yeah, and this surprises me. Watching the game, it felt like Brunson was better than 8 for 23
Right.
and -6. It felt like he did draw 4 charges. Felt like Julius Randle was better than 3. I know he wasn't good, and I know he's been bad, but I didn't know he was 3 of 15 with as many turnovers as field goals. That the Knicks had 18 assists. I really don't think the Cavs were much better if they were better. 22 assists. Both teams, it felt like it was a slog to the end, right? They're playing bop it with each other. Like the Knicks come down and they'll throw a little elbow, bop it, guy falls down. And then on the other side, Cavs were making their free throws when they got there, but they were so cold. I didn't think they were going to win a game, Pete, because 8.5 minutes into only Donovan had scored. So it's like, what the heck is going on here? And then I think it took a while to break away, but for me, it was that stretch last 3.5 of the first quarter. You had Karras knocking down a jumper, Tristan scored one inside, Craig Porter had the finish as well, and you had the Max Strus 3 free throws after getting fouled, which was the only time he scored more than 2. Another dud from him happens. He's off to a good start. He'll get back. But it was that stretch for me where Donovan finally got a rest and other players actually did something where it seemed like they could play a complete game and maybe win one.
Yeah, and on top of that, you can point to multiple things in this game. Like if you, as the Cavs guy, wanted to talk about how Donovan Mitchell couldn't hit a shot in the second half, you would have every right to do so. Like, oh, if Mitchell hit 1 or 2 shots, I mean, seriously, would have been a blowout. Maybe not a blowout, but you know what I'm saying. Same thing kind of for the Knicks, right? Randall looked afraid to shoot, which was actually the concerning part. Like if you have that 3 for 15 night, it's going to happen. But if you look really hesitant to shoot, which Randall did, that's what gets a little more frustrating. Like Mitchell, to his credit, even when he's ice cold, he doesn't hesitate. He's making his plays. He's playing his brand of basketball. If he had a couple shots there, you would be looking at this game different. But you could say the same thing about Randall and Brunson, who missed a ton of shots. And what I get a little nervous about, obviously Garland was out for the Cavs, and same with Jarrett Allen. RJ Barrett being out for the Knicks. How dependent are they going to be on RJ Barrett? Because for as much as you love a Hart and DiVincenzo for what they do, maybe not always filling up the stat sheet from a points perspective, but all the other stuff, all the intangibles, they're not 2 players who can step up and carry a load. RJ Barrett can do that. We saw it in the playoffs last year, having those games where he can really put a hurting on teams, attacking the rim, hitting some jump shots. And it felt like they really just missed that secondary punch. And other than quickly kind of getting hot in the second half there, it was a lot of just very mediocre offense out of the Knicks tonight. And early in the season, I'm not going to freak out, but it felt like the Barrett of it all was a little bit more important this early than I expected.
Yeah, and from the outside perspective, I never actually know how to gauge how he's playing because I'll watch a handful of Knicks games every year. I'm in the same market as you are, so every now and then I'll watch the Nets, I'll watch the Knicks, and it seemed that coming into the season, especially with the addition of DiVincenzo, it seemed maybe he'd lose value, maybe he'd play less. They don't need his scoring. I took him in fantasy actually this year with I think it was my final pick of the draft, second to last pick of the draft. He was rated pretty low. Took Strus the pick after. Ups and downs. He does have 2 double-doubles. But anyway, back to RJ Barrett. When I actually watch, his mid-range game is going. He's got a smooth touch. He's a confident shooter. He can slash. He's not an elite defender, but he's a good enough defender that he can hold his own against some of the better players on other teams. But I felt if he was playing tonight in a game like this, of course, no Jared Allen, no Darius Garland, another day with no Ty Jerome. Craig Porter's been serviceable, but would still be nice to have the shooting of a Ty Jerome at the point guard spot with Niang. I don't even know what's going on with him, truthfully. But Barrett would have made the difference in a game that, before all the fouls, was, a 7 or 9 point difference. You had a couple buckets that Julius couldn't get, that Jalen couldn't get, that Dante or Hart were missing, and maybe they get the win. If they're able to bring Hart off the bench with IQ, Dante, and Hartenstein, which I think is one of the best core 4 benches you'll have, they might have won. But because they didn't, Karis LeVert was the bench player to make the difference, ended up with 19, 6, and 5, an efficient day on +10. He was very shy throughout, but a couple of huge Dean Wade threes. I don't know why he didn't close the game. And really, though, the Cavs only got regular production from Evan, Donovan, and Karis. And obviously, I'll finish this little mini thing with this. I had to bring it out. Shout out to Tristan Thompson. I've had this. Let's get the full Thompson. I've had this jersey.
The old number.
He should be wearing 13.
Right? Doesn't he look weird in number 12? I got to be honest. It looks just like a little strange.
And for anyone on audio, Tristan Thompson jersey. Still got it. Got this his rookie season. Still here. The fact that we can rock it again is incredible. Truthfully, did not expect that option to come about. He does look weird in 12, but it's already grown on me.
It just looks like off, right? Just like it literally is one number off, but it looks like he got the wrong jersey on.
Well, what's funny is Dellavedova wore 3 different numbers with the Cavs, but no one had any thoughts about his 18 looking weird when he came. I liked his 18. I look at 8, and I think it's foreign. I have his Kings jersey, too. I got it last year. Weird year for him, of course. West Coast, barely getting in. First year not being a rotation player in his whole career. But that said, some guys have multiple stints. Like, sure, did Kurt Thomas always wear 40 when he was on the Knicks? Every tenure?
I can only picture 40. So if he wore something else, I can't picture it off the top of my head.
I'm sure there was. Anyone else real quick? Any Knicks in recent memory that had a second tenure after leaving? His last Tyson Chandler, right? Didn't he get a second tenure?
I don't know. What's popping into my head when you said that is all the random superstars or stars who showed up in New York for their final, 8 games of their career, like Tracy McGrady.
I was just going to say that. Hey, I will say T-Mac debuted on Friday Night Knicks, if I remember that correctly, and he had 26, 3, and 3 on that first game. I remember it well. They got him from Houston. That set the tone for him going to Detroit and Atlanta. And then the Spurs. I will say I liked Detroit McGrady. He had a couple triple doubles and played point guard for the first time in his career.
I always love T-Mac. Always love him.
Cool that he's back. He's got his 3-on-3 league going now.
And
then you guys had Larry Hughes at one point, I remember.
Oh, God. You're bringing up all this old stuff, man. It's making my feelings hurt a little bit. The era of the Knicks going for these stars that are just no longer – well, Larry Hughes wasn't a star, but you know what I mean. Yeah. All these known commodities that the Knicks would just pull in, and outside of like Jason Kidd in that 1 year they were the 2 seed, like all of it feels like a failure. All of it just feels like it just went horribly wrong.
Well, remember when they had a Francis Marbury backcourt, most expensive in the NBA, and Walt Frazier like Stevie franchise, and then they won 20 games, and that's what Isaiah Thomas at that time, who didn't know how to run the team as coach.
Yeah. God, I thought we were here to talk about like Evan Mobley or something. I'm never talk about all this old stuff. It's making me sad.
All right, fine. Well, shout out to Prime Eddie Curry, averaging 20 and 7. God. And now we'll switch to Evan Mobley.
That's good. That's a good
Eddie
poll.
Curry was a problem. Just watch his old highlights.
Real quick, that's the classic. Like Bill Simmons always brings this up, how there's all these guys from our childhood who someone makes a quick Instagram reel or TikTok reel, and it's like, so and so Eddie Curry was a problem, and it's like, well, yeah, he was a problem to the teams he was on because he wasn't consistent, was never in shape, and was never really on a winning team. But yeah, sure, his post moves were kind of cool every once in a while.
Hey, his one mistake is he forgot that he played for LeBron's Heat for part of a season when he lost 60 or 70 pounds that year.
Everyone forgot about that.
Yeah, not fair. People forget Dexter Pittman played for the Heat as well.
Oh my God.
I don't know why I'm going on about this. This is technically a Cavs pod. All right, sure. Let's talk about Evan Mobley, who
I would love to.
first half, just like last night, really wasn't there, was kind of invisible. Then, Pete, we get to the third quarter. He starts looking for his shot. He's getting around the paint. He's throwing up double, triple shot fakes in the lane. Winds up with 14, 8, 5, 2, and 2 on +8. His main impact came in the third quarter. But for me, it was the fact that he was just putting shots up. He was finally making moves, and it's clear he'd rather be a 4. That's my early takeaway on this season. That you should not trade the man in the middle, who will hopefully please be back soon. But he showed some flashes of what he was doing last year. And I think that his play in the third gave him the confidence they needed to come out in the fourth and put this thing away.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting that you went there right away, because part of my question about Evan Mobley was going to be that concept, right? That idea of if Jared Allen should be moved, right? Because not that I think that it should happen. I just think for the Cavaliers to unlock their potential, it really is dependent on Mobley hitting this next level, hitting this plane of not just a really good defender and cerebral offensive player, right? It feels like he needs to step up into becoming a mainstay offensive producer. And I thought I saw in the first game of the back-to-back and the second game, him looking for that shot more, looking to create for himself a little bit more. Obviously, the passing is such a great skill for him, and you don't want to lose that. But I really do think it's important for him to become a true point producer for this Cavs team to hit that next level. And unfortunately, that's just going to lead to the Jared Allen conversation. It's very similar to Jaren Jackson down in Memphis and how much more success he has when Steven Adams is on the floor. His defensive blocking numbers, his steal numbers are always better when Steven Adams is around. And you could probably say similarly about Mobley. But so you watch these last 2 games, or last 5 games, I guess, without Jared Allen, and you're thinking the opposite. You're thinking that he needs that presence, that center, to really be the big body down low so he can roam, be a little bit more of that free safety style player. And that opens up his offense, because to me, the offensive side of it is where it gets a little bit more frisky and maybe not as clear of how it'll work out.
And look, he wasn't even that bad yesterday, but it's the fact that he shot 3 of 9 was a -19. He had his 12 rebounds, he had his 5 assists, he had his 2 blocks, but 6 points without a free throw. And then yesterday you had the issue of, and it's only an issue just because maybe they're not ready for this many minutes, but you have to play Amani Bates about half the game. You have to play Craig Porter more than 20 minutes. A lot of that was circumstantial. And what I didn't realize, Don did not even make a 3 yesterday. That's a big surprise. I'm looking at yesterday's score, but the fact that it was Sam Merrill making a shot that had us excited, and I'm not knocking that. I loved him in the summer league. He was a huge part of the title. Crazy, he's already, 28 years old. He's aged very fast. He has a ring, and since then I think he stepped out of the hyperbolic time chamber and doubled his birthday count per year. But we were excited about a Sam Merrill shot, and I'm not hating on that. But this early in the season, that is really sad. And again, no sign of disrespect. I really like him, and he's the reason Dellavedova made the Kings, so no complaints. But as the last guy cut, Delly beat him for the roster spot, and then eventually Sam Merrill got to the Cavs because Delly went to the Kings, and he helped us last year. But it was brutal. And then today, and real quick on Mobley, on that discourse, you made some really good points there. I think the most important is that he's still 21, 22 years old. He's still growing into his body. You wish he was big, huge by now. But it took Giannis a couple of years, and I'm not comparing, but it took Giannis a few years to really get into himself. He came into the league as a small forward. Now he's a true 4 or 5. I think Evan can be a 5 at some point, but you still need a bigger 4 next to him, kind of like what the Spurs are doing for right now throwing Zach Collins next to Wemby, and no one's saying that's the wrong move. I think it's the perfect move for them, and it allows you the defensive versatility, which Mobley and Allen together gives you that few other teams had. And when you had the two of them with Lauri Markkanen, even more so. And when one guy was out, you just slide up the next. But someone teach George Niang how to shoot a floater, because those floaters were disgusting.
Don't sleep on George Niang. I'm sure it's a rocky start for you guys, Cavs fans, but I've watched this guy just be an assassin for 3 years in a row. I mean, I heard Mike Breen say it on the broadcast tonight. He shot 40% from three for 3 different teams now, and that's incredibly impressive. So to that point, like Georges Niang, I think he's actually going to be one of those spacers that you desperately needed last year, and he's going to end up being a huge component for your team. Like to the point of the offensive side of it with Mobley and Allen, that's where I have concerns with, because I love Jared Allen. I loved him in Brooklyn. I think he's a great player. But with Mobley next to him, it makes both of those guys kind of clog up the paint a little bit. Mobley hasn't proven that he can step outside of like 12 to 15 feet and shoot yet. So with Georges Niang, if they can hold up defensively, because Mobley is so good on the defensive side, that's that unit that comes in when Allen sits and can be electric. And, obviously you don't want to compare it to one of the true small ball peaks of like the Warriors or something like that. But just from like an idealistic standpoint, Mobley could be a Draymond style player, very different body size, very different physicality, but the defensive versatility, the passing is so good. And then if you have the Niang side of it where he's knocking down 3 balls, that's dangerous to me. And as an opposing fan watching the Cavs, when I watch the Cavs not playing the Knicks, I typically kind of lean towards rooting for them a little bit, despite the standing battle that we may be in as a Knicks fan here. But just because I like your players, I like Garland, I like Allen, I like Mitchell, whatever. It is what it is. But to me, that lineup would be so scary to watch Mobley, Niang, Mitchell, Garland, and, throw in whoever you want. Dean Wade, who I happen to really like, despite his lack of production sometimes. I think that's really scary. And I think that type of setup, again, if they can hold up defensively over a longer period of time, that's the scariest lineup to me.
No, and I'm with that. I think the thing with, and the S is silent in George, by the way. It's not popularly known because you don't hear his name out loud much. But I don't know why it's spelled with an S.
It's not Georges, it's George.
It's just George. Yeah,
I always thought people just called him George for short. So I knew that, and I didn't even care.
No, I did. I grew up with a kid named Luca, but it was Lucas. So I don't understand him either. But nonetheless,
nonetheless. If we're cutting out the S's at the end of words, nonetheless.
My last name is in shambles right now. I'm just Zach Y. Zach who? Zach what? No. But when Garland and Mitchell are together, and I do think defensively they do enough. I think they force enough steals. I think they force enough swings, and I think at certain points they get teams out of system because they're just thinking, we can post them up. Eventually, they're not going to have the touches around the perimeter they need with thinking they have those advantages, and I think it works in their favor. But I think Niang and Strus and all these other guys will be great when everyone's healthy. Because Strus on opening night, he was open every time against the Nets. He was catching, shooting immediately. He's missed the same shots. I think he'll have more time when Garland is the one facilitating, because the fact is they've played 4 straight games without a true point guard on the court for more than 10 to 15 minutes a night. And I'm not knocking Craig Porter, who we all have very high hopes for, but he needs to learn the game. He needs to dominate or play at a high level in the G League first in order to get that NBA confidence, which, unlike all the other two-way guards the Cavs have had in recent years, he's going to be the first one to really make a huge impact all year long. Brandon Goodwin's probably the most recent from a couple of years back. RJ Nembhard never really had this opportunity, but he'll get there. And I think Amani Bates is another guy who you saw last night. Airballed the first shot, then hit that nice one from the corner. And again, the fact that we're so excited about that. Yes, it's Amani. Let's go. He's here. But also, damn, we're this excited about one corner 3 just because he airballed the previous shot. Maybe the excitement would have been less if he hadn't. So these 2 games, Pete, for me, taught me that if they met again in the playoffs, if this was the lineup for the Cavs, it's a Knicks sweep and maybe a gentleman's sweep. Then you add the stars in, and we see what happens. But it showed me they're still tougher than the Cavs are, and I don't care that Jarrett's out. You should still be able to be tough. Tristan Thompson can only do so much for his stretches on the court. His impact is going to be less than it was his first tenure, but he's still going to be out there. I think he can still get rotation minutes ahead of Jones when everyone's back, which makes me really excited because you almost fill the void of what Kevin Love left. Very different impacts. Love will impact a lot more statistically and spreading the floor and shooting. But it's the toughness, it's the leadership, it's understanding Cleveland culture from years past and merging it with present with bringing him to the team. And that's it, though. It's just him and Evan to grab rebounds. Yeah, Niang had 8, but I feel like there were so many times where he just wasn't grabbing it. There were so many times, again, where Mitchell Robinson just was eating the Cavs alive. What did he have, 17, 18 rebounds in this game tonight? Like, my goodness.
Yeah. And well, to go back to that Cavs larger picture point, I think that's what gave me pause when I gave my, preseason outlook on the Eastern Conference is I still expect the Cavs to be that great regular season team. Now, obviously, we're not going to rush to judgment over these first couple games here because of the injuries. But when it comes down to the tougher situations, like you talked about, if the Knicks and Cavs met in the playoffs again, I still think the Knicks' advantage is the same as it was last year. It's when Mitchell and Garland are off the floor, who is going to take up those minutes? Now, I thought Porter played with great confidence. You can argue he played with too much confidence at times in those first or these last 2 games. But the depth for the Knicks is so clearly a strength, which was a little bit notched down because RJ Barrett was out in the second game. But that's where the strength lies for the Knicks. For the Cavs, you got some new faces in there, but those faces aren't going to fill the void of that point guard or that secondary point guard behind Mitchell and Garland, right? Like that's still going to be an issue. And they're going to have to play 39 minutes a game again. And like, that's where it quickly becomes such a game changer for the Knicks. And the Cavs just don't have that depth to lean on. Now, if Strus and Dean Wade and Karis LeVert can be those people, obviously we spoke at length about Karis LeVert and his shortcomings as well as his talent into that playoff series last year. To me, he's just not the most reliable facilitator. He can do it. He just chooses not to from time to time. So that makes me a little bit nervous about the Cavs on the big picture front. Like I'm not worried about them winning 48 to 53 games. I think that's near a lock because of the talent they have at the high end. But what are those other guys going to be able to do to fill that void? Are they going to be able to out rebound a Mitchell Robinson? Because clearly that's a matchup issue for them that they can't handle at the moment. And there's other guys in this league who can do what Mitchell Robinson does. So yeah, to me, it's just a matter of, can they make some moves to shore up that bench to create a little bit more of a strength in numbers to balance out that attack? Because like you saw in these last 2 games, if Mitchell's not hitting shots, especially without Garland, it's just going to be tough for you to get consistent offense. It's not going to be easy.
I do think Karis has taken a huge step forward in the 4 games he's played in this year. Now it's a very small sample, but
it's looked good.
Opening night, he did struggle overall, but he still managed to hit 3 threes, which was not the everyday case last year. Tonight, he put in the 19 points. He had the 31 against Indy in the start. And he was my pick for 6th man of the year. I know the race right now is insane with so many players. They'll have to wait a couple more weeks to see who can actually be. And IQ will be in the conversation again, but it's not going to be him and Brogdon. Brogdon's actually playing well again, but there's no chance he gets a repeat 6th man of the year. I didn't even know he was going to stay in Portland. I was kind of shocked opening night when I saw him playing 25 minutes. But I've seen a few Blazer games, and
He'd be a great ad for you, by the way. He'd be a awesome Cav. My God, that's exactly what you need. Probably not, but
it could be. I don't know what they want for him. I thought his health was still an issue. I didn't know he was even playing because the Celtics were worried about his elbow. Yeah, and he's been out here playing 25 minutes a night while mentoring Scoot. Simons being out hasn't messed them up yet. They had a nice win over shorthanded Pistons team tonight. Caught the end of that game. But anyway. Closing thoughts here as we will look ahead to both team schedules, look at the next 3 games, and we'll do some record picks. All right, Nick's got a fun next 3 games. You got the Bucks on Friday, then you got a nice weekend of rest, then you'll probably be the James Harden debut at MSG on Monday, And then they get Wembanyama. Oh, my God. Good luck with those ticket prices next Wednesday when Wemby comes to town. 7:30 next Wednesday. So you got road Bucks, home Clippers, home Spurs, assuming that they have a full-strength roster, especially with a couple days between every game. What's your record for the Knicks in that stretch?
I think that the Knicks are going to turn back to a positive note a little bit here. I think Brunson's been a little bit inconsistent early on so far. Obviously, Randall similarly hasn't really had one of the classic Randall games just yet. I think going to Milwaukee is always going to be difficult. I'm never going to chalk that up as a win, but I do think that the Clippers and Spurs games back at home are going to be wins. So I'm going to say 2 and 3 over the next 3 for the Knicks. Never going to say that Giannis is going to be, expected to lose. That's not something I'm in the business of.
Yeah, tonight was a weird one. The Pacers lost by 51. I didn't know. I was watching a little bit early on. The Celtics beat the Pacers 155-104. The bench unit in the fourth scored 46 points.
My God.
Delano Banton had 11 points. What were you doing last year, Nick Nurse?
I don't even know who that is. I don't even know who, and I watch about as much basketball as humanly possible.
But that's all right.
Zach, before we go on to the Cavs schedule, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I want to ask you the similar question that I was talking about with the Cavs for the Knicks, right? So as an opposing fan, I'm going to say outside of Brunson, because I think it's pretty clear that he is the number one option on this team. So outside of Jalen Brunson, who is the person who kind of scares you the most in the Knicks lineup when they're cooking or when they hit a shot or two that kind of just goes to you? Okay, we got to watch out because this guy might get hot and he might take over this game, etc.
So I will say it's very game dependent with that team, just because I think the roles change throughout the course, and I think Tibbs is okay with that. The obvious answer would be Julius Randle, just because I've seen how many crazy shots he's made for all the shot chucker and 3-point merchant or whatever people want to call him. I've seen him hit some insane shots, and then the buzzer beaters, the clutch ones, 2 all-star seasons. I don't care that he had 6 tonight. I still felt like often when he got the ball, I'm still afraid when it leaves his hand as an opposing fan. Whereas being a fan of the team, I know I'd feel different. But some nights it could be Josh Hart, because in the first round series, he makes the hustle plays. When a shot goes up, I know we're not going to get a defensive rebound because Mitchell Robinson is there and Josh Hart is there, and they're all great at back tapping and just pulling it down. They're going to get the star guards in foul trouble in the process. But then other times, like I was watching IQ this evening, it'd probably be him for today. Every shot he was taking was good. He was getting a lot of fouls. It wasn't a ton of contact. We're not here to debate the officials here, because I thought overall it evened itself out today. But he wasn't missing, and I've seen him hit some 30-footers as he's gotten more calm. I remember the back of the days of Quivers with him and Austin Rivers, when they were both hot.
Yeah.
Last time Austin Rivers was on an NBA high. Now he's an analyst now with his dad. But anyway.
He's still on a team. I think he's right?
No.
He didn't go back.
On the ESPN rotation now.
I thought Rivers went back to Minnesota. Is that not true? Oh my God.
He did not. You can double check that.
He's got a podcast with the Ringer called Off Guard or something like that. But
that's why I keep seeing him pop up.
Yeah, he's not back with Minnesota. That's crazy.
No, but unrelated. Then I'll pick the Cavs. But my answer to you would be most of the time Julius Randle and Josh Hart and IQ would be 1B, 1C.
Yeah.
No disrespect on RJ, but I just don't feel like I will come into a game thinking he's going to score 35 and get the side of fries and a dub.
The reason I asked is because it's really easy before the season starts to say, oh, the Knicks have all these different guys who are going to be consistently good and put up numbers and et cetera. And then you watch them night to night and you realize that it really does depend on more than one person to be good every night. And until Randall starts being consistent again, which I'm not nervous that he won't be, it makes you think, is this offense going to be a little bit more of a slog than we expected? Just because there was in the preseason, everything's, butterflies, right? Oh, quickly he's going to do this. RJ's going to do that. Randall's going to do this. Hart and DiVincenzo. It's beautiful. What a beautiful thing. Right. But then you watch it in moment to moment and you say, oh my gosh, they're not getting good shots right now. And that's why I'm just curious as an outside fan or a opposing fan, I should say, what makes you more nervous to see? And I think the Quickly thing has to be big this year. So yeah, continue.
And the Knicks are a better version of that Nets team that snuck in as a 6 seed, where it's like we got left-handed all-star caliber point guard D'Angelo Russell, and then just a bunch of guys that'll kind of interchange whose night it is. You got your center, and then besides that, you don't know who it's going to be. You have all these options, 6 or 7 guys. They're going to move the ball well, and different times it's going to be different players. So that's kind of the way I view that. And obviously a better version as they just made a second round, and they were not in my top 4 preseason. It's still way too early to amend that, but we'll see what happens. And my only other question for you, then I'll pick the Cavs and we'll sign off, is with all these players with shows, do you have a favorite? I don't listen to full clips, but I love the shorter ones pulled from PG, from Lou Will, for obviously the Austin Rivers show, Alt Smoke every now and then. JJ Redick obviously is the biggest, but do you have a favorite?
I think when it comes down to strictly basketball analysis, I'm going to go JJ Redick. I think he has probably one of the best perspectives in the game, and that's ex-players versus pure analysts alike, right? He's just really good at breaking down the game, talking about players' strengths, weaknesses in a way that's understandable to us. So I think JJ does a great job with that, but I got to give this one a shout out because I haven't loved this guy throughout his career. In fact, he infuriates me from time to time, but the PBev pod provides some great entertainment. I got to say, between Pat Bev and Roan, who is a comedian type who does the co-hosting with Pat Bev on that show, it's entertaining and they do some funny stuff, and PBev kind of doesn't care what he says. He speaks his mind, which I appreciate, and all good podcasters have to do so. So I give PBev a shout, even though on the court he drives me nuts because he acts like he's a freaking 5-time All-Star when he's a bench player at best. But on the podcast, I enjoy Pat Beverly. I'm not afraid to say it.
That's my bad leaving him off, and I respect that pod a lot because the social media manager, the one who's putting out all the clips that you see, is someone whose games I called his freshman year, former Division III point guard Jordan Petway, who really does everything you could think of. Shout out Endicott, obviously. But anything you could think of, he's got a really great basketball portfolio. He's done some stuff with Slam, and he might still. He's building a huge brand. I know he manages the pod and does some other national stuff, but that's why I've liked that pod from the beginning, because it's very rare for something like that to happen. In the person's kind of in your age bracket, and then they're running it someone you know well. So I think for that reason, it's given me. I think it's the only pod I follow really. I actually press follow on because all the other clips just pop in my feed, and I'm not mad about that because I've lived on the For You on X/Twitter, whatever these days. So I really do enjoy that one. Yes, Pat Bev's crazy, but they know how to get clicks. They know how to survive with all these player pods, and I give them a lot of credit for that. And
makes it harder for you and I.
Well, we get there. It's all about having fun at the end of the day. We're not doing this to be seen by 50,000 people. If that happens, that's wonderful. But, getting out there, it's a passion project. It's a great passion project. So, are you in a new network, by the way? Did you?
No, man, I'm riding solo, bro. I'm letting it rip solo. I'm going for it. Subway Sports Talk is out here just doing my own thing. I got my rotating cast of co-hosts who I appreciate and adore, including guys like Pat Boyle and Cody O'Connor, Alec Argento, give him a shout out, Mark Shenlugan. So if anyone wants to listen to some horrible takes, Mark Shenlugan's on my podcast as well. You guys don't know who he is. That's okay. If he actually doesn't have horrible takes, we have to mess with him because he has strong takes. That's what I'll say about my guy, Mark. But we do football, basketball, baseball. The NFL picks are hot right now, Zach. We're crushing it. I'm 13-7-1. So we're cooking through week 8.
What was the tie?
The Saints against the Green Bay Packers. I was in New Orleans for the game, and they were up 18 or 19? No, 17-0 or something like that. And in the fourth quarter, Derek Carr got hurt. Jordan Love had his only good moment of the season because he stinks, and they won by 1 point. I was so mad.
Wait, that was the tie?
No. Oh, well, I had the -1. Sorry. I had the Saints -1, +1.
Oh, God.
I had them +1. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I had the
no, that's fair.
+1. They were up 17-0. Derek Carr gets hurt. They blow the lead in the fourth quarter and lose by 1. So I pushed. That was my tie.
Okay. And now let's quick Cavs take. Wow, the Cavs are 13th in the East coming in tonight. Wow, who knew? I got the Pacers on Friday. That's a dub. I know Indiana's going to be coming in off losing by 50, but I hope that Darius is back. They're not going to lose to Indy twice. This might be an in-season tournament game. Warriors Cavs on Sunday. That's a loss. I know it's in Cleveland, but I'm very intrigued by the Chris Paul Warriors. I haven't watched a 4-quarter game yet. I've seen a couple quarters here and there so far. Love what he's brought. We'll see how it works when they're at full strength. I don't know if they've had a fully. I think Kuminga's out right now. I saw them playing Trace Jackson and Brandon Podzinski the other night. I don't know who the second guy that was out was. Maybe it was Clay. But they scare me a lot. And then the Thunder on Wednesday is also going to be a redemption win. They'll split the season series. Thank goodness we don't have to see Chet a third time. I know they blew a big lead to the Pelicans and lost today by 4. But Chet Holmgren fills out a lineup perfectly. They just have no idea how to manage their bench, even still. Because they got 7 or 8 guys that Diagonal likes, and he has no clue who to play for how many minutes. Perfect starting lineup. And J-Dub, I didn't think was going to be a 4. I thought that Dort was going to come off the bench, and they were going to start J-Will with J-Dub, the 2 Jalen's, with Chet, and bring Dort off the bench. But they're proving me wrong. We'll see. Still, no bench. It's a 5-man lineup, and then Casey Wallace is okay. Isaiah Joe has his moments. Poku plays well sometimes. I think whoever their backup center was supposed to be has been hurt of Jalen. But I got the Cavs going 2-1 on this stretch. And my final comment for you here, Pete, is going back to your pod shout out. I think you really like saying your friend Mark Shenlugin's last name because you said it multiple times in short order, and I had to comment on that.
Yeah, Mark Shenlugin, also known as Mark Skip Lugan, because he loves Skip Bayless. And if you're sending tweets to the group chat of Skip Bayless to back up your points, no, that's not good, bro. You know what? You try to say that he hates Daniel Jones, which is fine. I'm not a huge Daniel Jones fan either, but he'll put a text about Daniel Jones and then send in a Skip Bayless tweet to back up his point. I'm like, no, that doesn't make your point better. It makes it worse. Okay, Skip Lugan. So yeah, his last name is fun to say when you're being salty. So we love Mark. It's just really fun to mess with him, and he loves to mess with us back.
And Skip Bayless follows exactly 0 people on Twitter, so he doesn't even care what people are saying. He just posts and gets off. I don't think he engages with anything. It's just his diary that he doesn't that people actually read. It's a reverse diary.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't even reread tweets. He just goes all caps and hits send.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Fox Sports, do your thing, right? But
yeah.
No,
Can I say that I think the Cavs are going to go 1-2 in the next games?
Who are we beating?
You're beating the Warriors.
Okay, I mean, I'd be happy to beat the Warriors, and I'll give the Knicks. Let me pull this back. I think I got you guys going 1-3, and I don't say that in a negative way. The Spurs. I've watched 2 full Spurs games this year.
Too. They're frisky.
I didn't watch last night after the Cavs ended. I need to go to bed because I was exhausted last night. But I think this is going to be a fun matchup, though, seeing Wemby and Mitch go at it. Although, honestly, Wemby's probably going to be guarding Randall. Or they might just float him on Barrett or Grimes. Grimes is probably the best idea. Then you can move everyone else. If you're starting Sohan, that's pretty easy. You put Sohan on Randall, and they got the most switchable lineup in the world, even though it doesn't move the ball very well on the other end. I think the Bucks get it going, and I think the Clippers are sneaky. The team they would be most likely to beat in this stretch, I'd say, would be the Clippers. I just think the Bucks coming off their dud tonight against Toronto are going to regroup. And the 2 duds in 4 games, Dame has had 3 mediocre games in a row. So I think the Knicks are going to unfortunately be the team that he gets his first 30-piece against. But we'll see what happens, right? That could be – I don't know if Middleton's going to play. They have some weird rest strategies there. But I do like the Bucks bench rotation. I like Malik Beasley's fit. The one game of theirs I watched in full, even though they lost by, 25 the other night to the Hawks – I liked Malik Beasley. I like Pat Connaughton. They're not great right now, but they're going to be, and I think they're due to go on this run because just like the Patriots, you never, and I don't know why I'm footballing it right now, but you never judge the first 4 games when you had Tom Brady. You judge the next 5, 6, 7 after the first week when you've had cohesion, you've had practice, and you've gone through it together. So that's my closing thought for today's pod.
I would agree with that. You can't freak out too much. It's so early. You look at the standings in the East, and it's like, everyone's 2-3 or 3-2. It's nothing to be too scared of yet. This constant standings checking doesn't need to be happening frequently until another 3 to 5 weeks.
Exactly. And the Jazz are beating the Grizzlies by 27.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I saw that when we came on. And with Walker Kessler only playing 17 minutes. And Colin Sexton scoring 18 points. Yes, sir.
Your boy.
It's a tough start for him this year. Tough start for Abaji, shooting 20% from the field, averaging 2 points a game. But they're going to win tonight, and I am a Utah Cavs fan forever and always. Mm-hmm. And that's not a spoken typo. That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yep, I figured.
All right, Pete, pleasure having you on. We talked some Knicks, we talked some Cavs, we talked some classics, we talked some future, and looking forward to reversing and coming on the SST pod. And I'll even get football picks that day. I'll let people lose money because of the words that come out of my mouth. I will allow it. I will give free advice, free losing advice from Zach Weiss.
What you have to remember always, it's just as hard to get a pick wrong as it is to get right.
That's fair. Can I hang that? Can I put that up behind me for the next episode?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go try to get as many picks wrong as possible on Sunday. You'll probably do just fine.
All right. Well, my one pick on the NFL schedule, I don't know what. My closing thought will actually be NFL. All right. First thought. All right. Will Levis will start for me in fantasy tomorrow over CJ Stroud.
And I might do the same.
Say it again.
I might do the same thing, actually, in a league.
And he's going to throw 3 touchdowns, 240 yards, and they're going to beat the Steelers by 10.
And the Steelers win by 1. That's what the Steelers do. The Steelers play terrible for 3.5 quarters and then win. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, what's the first syllable of their name?
Steal.
That's what they do to games. They don't deserve the wins, but They go vulture from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They vulture the game away in the final seconds.
What a great show.
And that's the perfect way to close up. He's Pete Kennedy. I'm Zach Weiss. We'll see you next time across the Cavs Network 216.